Yay, welcome to Understanding User Needs. Helen Burge will be your instructor. She's currently the Director of Digital Accessibility at Teslio. She has a focus on testing with accessibility. She's worked at lots of great accessibility companies like DQ, AbilityNet, and she's worked at Tenon. And she's committed to lifelong learning and continuing to refine her skills. So welcome to Helen. I just want to give you a housekeeping note that we do want to make sure if you ask questions or have comments that you use the microphone. So just give me a minute to crawl through the chairs and I'll pass you the microphone as we go along. Okay.
Thank you, Brenda. I do this to every person chairing. I make them talk about me. So I did put Brenda on the spot like 5 minutes to prep. So anyway, this is about understanding the user needs. And it's one I did last year, but I have updated it because it's got new fancy looking slide backgrounds. Anyway, so I always like to say why I'm qualified to talk on the subject, because when I have a talk being given to me, I always like to know what makes it okay for you to talk about it. So I've worked in accessibility since 2000. I'm showing off my age. I've also done usability studies, and I found those taught me so much. Because I'm also the mum to 2 neurodivergent boys, which is why this picture, you had the professional one before. This is how I look more normally with my youngest autistic son trying to pull my hair out. He's watched Ratatouille way too many times, I swear. I think he does actually try to drive me by using my hair. And everyone says, why don't you put it in a bun? There's an easier to grab thing. So yes, so this is an average look for me when I'm not in the office. I also ask a lot of questions. When I meet new people, I ask. I don't always get very forward to start off with because I appreciate asking someone personal details is not the done thing. I've learned over the years, don't be so blunt. Some might say I have neurodivergency too. Who knows? They get it from somewhere, don't they? And I'm also an invited expert with the W3C. So those are my credentials. I've done a lot of work. I'm old and I'm a mum. So anyway, here we have some images of my boys. And I think when I'm talking about users and their needs, I'm talking about my boys because they're both neurodivergent. My eldest, you see him kissing his little brother when he first came out of hospital in January 21. My eldest has every neurodivergent condition under the sun. He has ADHD, he has autism, he has sensory processing disorder, he has dyspraxia, dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia. Are there any I haven't mentioned? Because I think I've forgotten some. But he has all of them. And his little brother is autistic. Level 3, I think that's the term, isn't it, for the severe side. I used to say non-verbal, but he's learned to speak a bit. Anyway, here they are posing for a photo and being very mouth-oriented. His brother's chewing his sleeve. And I have to admit, I really love that photo because his brother doesn't do those honest smiles anymore. That's a genuine, I'm happy smile. Now it tends to look more forced because I'm always making him smile for photos and he doesn't really want to. There they are, standing together. Literally, the youngest one was climbing up his climbing frame and his brother was chasing him to try to get the photo. That's pretty much how it goes. We always end up chasing after Matthew, and Sean, who's the eldest, loves trying to help. He's a sweet boy and he's always trying to help. But sometimes with his dyspraxia, he doesn't know how much force to use at times. So sometimes he can be a bit rough. Matthew, on the other hand, is a little, can I say a rude word? A little cock at times to me. Is that rude in American? I don't know. Or a little, because I have scars on my arms from where he's clawed me to get the TV remote because he doesn't like what's on TV. He's very expressive with pushing you into things. He loves me, really. I'm not in it, but that's his way of communicating. He's got a few words, and one of the words, he does the alphabet, and he does it wrong. He keeps saying Z, And I'm like, no, it's Z. And he goes, Z. And I'm like, that's him arguing with me. And here's the two boys at an aquarium. That is, trying to remember which one. I think that's the one in Chester Aquarium. We go there when we go back from Ireland down to see the family. It's always nice to have that. Unfortunately, Matthew's got to the stage of rushing through everything. So you pay a lot of money to spend 5 minutes running through the corridors trying to keep up with him. It's all good. So now 2025 photos. That's Matthew. I'd taken him to hospital because he wasn't well. It took 3 of us to hold him down to inspect his ears. And you think, as his mum and as his human, I would have a way to do this. I have to literally clean his ears when he's asleep. And it's one at a time, because if he wakes up slightly, he will then fall asleep with his hands over his ears. So his head sensory, washing his hair. We have got teeth worked out because he says wash teeth now. I like it. And we've got one of those tube brushes that he can use. We adapt. And that's him in his sleeping bag, because we find a sleeping bag contains him a bit. But you can see here that there is an escape hatch here, a doorway that you can go out. No, I'm going to climb out the window. I mean, that is the logic there. I'm going to climb out here because Mummy sat over there taking photos of me. This is me proving to my husband, no, he's not tired. He's not going to go to sleep. It is, we're trying melatonin now. So yes, he is well known for making sure I don't sleep. You can see we've got a sensory area for him. His bedroom it's got a bubble fountain on the wall. It's got laser lights for the stars. And he's got a roof on his bed, which we thought was a really good idea until we got it, because he climbs up on top of it and slides down off the roof. He has no sense of danger. We're not sure what to do, but we did put some LED lights on the inside to sort of just make it a bit of a sensory calm down experience, because the lights and that, he loves them. Sometimes if he's had a hard day at school, he'll get his pajamas, force them at you, make you change him, and then he goes. And yeah, I do talk a lot about my family. And then there's Sean, who's posing with one of his recent kills, a wooden bear. No bears were harmed in the making of this photo, with obviously his umbrella that he used to kill the bear. No? Okay, maybe not. But yeah, as you can see there, the smile it doesn't seem as natural now. It's getting more of a forced one. And then there's me and him chinking our glasses, and he's like going, yay, because I'm going to get some sweets after this. And Dave Dorber got me some candy corn, because he asked, as I was coming to America, I must get some candy corn, because he's obsessing about everything American, and he thinks he's got to try it. I have been told he's going to hate it, and I think that's going to be the case. And I wasn't expecting Dave to get me a massive tub. So I'm in trouble, aren't I? Anyway, and now we have the hammock swings. With the sensory needs, both boys really benefit from this. So I'm going to play a video, and I've done the share audio, but the audio is more me telling him to not hurt me. And we will see the hammock swing in action. That is how he uses it. You're meant to sit in it. And he will run like that for hours, running in circles. It's a great way to burn off his energy. But what he likes is the sensory wrapping around. Like sometimes we'll sit in there with him and sort of make it into a sort of cocoon type effort. And his brother likes it too, because he likes to swing back and forth. It's a different sensation for him. Yeah, and I forgot to click, I pressed play. So now we get to the main part of the talk, because that's just the introduction of why both boys have autism. Both boys very different. One of them we've had to make a lot of accommodations for. The other one makes accommodations for us. And it just shows neurodivergency, because of the nature of the brain, is hard to say what one diagnosis means. And from this learned experience, I thought I would do a talk about assumptions, because we all do it. We all assume a lot, like, crisps. That's natural, isn't it? That was a discussion for, but when I was new to accessibility, and I will say some of these are not my assumptions, some of them are, but when you're new to accessibility, the assumptions we make about users, and I've done an image here, or I've found an image here of a very narrow street to show how narrow my mind was. Yeah, if I have to explain it, maybe it's not worth using. I don't know. Anyway, some of the ones I have heard others making have been when I deliver results to a client as well. When they say to me some of these items, it's always interesting. Anyway, so users that need accessibility are permanently disabled. That is one assumption. Accessibility audits only test for blind users. User interactions are basic. Plain text websites are the only way to be accessible. I'll tell you the story of that one. Meeting the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines makes your content accessible. So how many of those do you think are valid or ones that you might have had in the past? Any? I'm going to take the silence as it's too early to think. Stop it, Helen. Because some of these are ones that I've had. So I'm going to address each of these in turn. So here I've got the image of the Microsoft Design Toolkit, where we have permanent, temporary, and situational. So users that need accessibility are permanently disabled. Not true. For instance, you're going shopping, your hands are full of bags. This might be more for the women than the guys, I don't know. I should never assume though, should I? How do you answer your phone when it rings? That's a situation where your mobility is impaired, or you could be distracted because you're trying to find a place to. That is a situational disability. And you're not going to always have your hands full of, well, unless you're a parent, you're not going to have your hands full of bags all the time. I've actually kind of enjoyed not having to carry all the things for my kids. It's great. It's like every time I go out, I turn into a massive bag lady carrying everyone else's coats and all that. Yeah, it's fun. We also change in different environments and contexts. So for instance, here, I'm trying to be more polite and loudly spoken. Normally I'm quite quiet. I whisper, but I don't want to be heard. Oh no. But in different environments and contexts, we change how we are. And access needs can be permanent, temporary, or situational. So when we're talking about access, it could be you've had a few to drink. How easy are those stairs when you've had a few to drink compared to when you're sober the next day and you wonder where the bruises came from? Just asking for a friend. And yes, there's the link to the Microsoft Inclusive Design Toolkit. I think it's something everyone knows about these days, but it is quite a good way of illustrating it. And I know I was in Adrian's talk on Tuesday, and he was saying, why is there an opera singer as one of the characters? And I had to tell him it's actually the accent. It's a stereotypical not wearing the traditional Western outfit, not an opera singer. Anyway, I also like the bartender one because I often say this is why there's apps now, so you can order your drinks at bars, so that people can actually read rather than have to try and hear you over the lovely music that's playing out. I swear they make it louder the worse it is. Is that just me? Am I old now? I don't know. Okay, accessibility audits only tests for blind users. This is what I often hear from clients, because how many bugs do you raise that don't mention a screen reader? The main reason, and this is a lovely image of a half-formed head with metal, which is basically, it's a half-formed idea, I think. I think the reality is it seems like we test for only blind users because the screen reader is a developer's worst nightmare. It highlights the code issues straight away. So if someone's coded something badly, we're going to hear it with a screen reader. Not all of us are great at reading code, but we are great at using, well, okay. Most of us should be great if we're testers of accessibility. I'm digging a hole for myself here, people. But most issues are found by the screen reader user because they're often not thought about. And often, all this talk of AI, when AI has built something, it's not going to be using HTML5, it's going to be using Divitus, which is poorly formed for the screen reader user. So yeah, oh yeah, I covered that. And there also can be keyboard issues because the screen reader and keyboard do go hand in hand. If the keyboard can't focus an item and activate it, it's unlikely the screen reader will. The screen reader might focus it, but might have the same issues at not being able to activate, especially if they're a keyboard only screen reader user. So yes, keyboard alone is also something I think should be tested because the screen reader has ways to bypass. Like for instance, if you're swiping left to right, next item, you can focus these items, the keyboard only user can't. And there are other users we test for. There's visually impaired. So someone who might see colors differently, someone who can't see the text on the screen. We're testing for those, the text increases of size and the browser zooms and making sure color alone is not used to describe things. Hearing auditory, more for media. It used to be, I don't know, in the 90s, when there used to be lots of embedded music into websites was, yeah, okay, I'm getting nods. So that means I'm not alone in finding that. And I'm so glad that's not anymore. It used to be you'd open up a website and be like, what the hell is that? How do I mute it? Because they thought it was cool. Dreamweaver has a lot to answer for. That was a tool used to make websites that might be what AI is based on at the moment. Who knows? Anyway, and neurodivergent, we do test for neurodivergent users. The reason why people don't think about it is because it's harder to do sometimes because it's a AAA requirement, like with the use of language, making sure it's simple and easy to understand and acronyms. Those are all AAAs, but keeping it simple. That's one, keeping it consistent. I will sometimes say keeping it simple. That is a level A, but I'm slightly trying to fit it in there. So I have to be careful how I do this. And dexterity and mobility. So again, going to the keyboard or other alternatives to navigate. Yes, the screen reader might identify the issue in the first round because I often say the best thing to start testing with is the screen reader because it will identify the code issues. But then you also test for these other users and using the tools they use because sometimes people think you're only testing for blind users, so I just have to fix the things affecting a screen reader. In fact, I'm having the fun at the moment of a client that has deliberately missed out half of their application for a screen reader user to use. And I'm trying to say, but not all screen reader users are blind, which comes, oh yeah, there's speech as well. We don't have many, if you're testing something, it'll be in voice navigation. But I'm going on to my next assumption. I realize I'm jumping ahead because, oh no, I'm not. That's a later one. Okay, I've jumped ahead way too many slides. But anyway, user interactions are basic. I'll just forget about my faux pas. So how many people thought about how someone that is blind interacts with a website and assumed that was different from how you browsed? Anyone? Any hands? Yeah, because I have to, no, that was just a handout. We don't want to make people run, not this time in the morning. We'll do it later on. But I have to admit, when I first started with a screen reader, I assumed that a blind person would sit there listening to the whole screen. And that's not true. They skim read. They don't have time to listen to all the content because it was quite, when I was doing the listening to everything all at once, like listening to a whole page being read out, thinking I was being a really cool tester, people would always come up to ask me a question and I'd be like, go away, I'm trying to test. That was a nightmare. I still am, but different ways now. But now that I've learned that I was the problem there was the point between the keyboard and the chair. That's me. And I've learnt, I was an Egypt, that's Irish for idiot. I learnt that anyone who's blind will skip through the content to find what they want the same way a sighted person does. So yes, it's not just listening to the whole page or using the tab key. So we've got next item navigation so that you can go through each item sequentially. I did have a client adding tab indexes to plain text because they assumed tabbing through was the way to get to the content. They didn't realize that the arrow keys could be used to navigate down. And it was no, they were trying to be accessible. Or another client that auto expanded on focus the menu, and they had about 20 options across the top of the screen, each with about 10 or 15 options in the drop down. So if you wanted to get to the last menu item, you had to tab through all the sub menus to get to the end of the menu items. So understanding how people navigate, like headings. Everyone goes on about sequential headings. That is a best practice, but it does improve things for users. Just because it's not a normative doesn't mean it shouldn't be tested. And that's another one. And talking to users will help understanding. I often find the best way for someone to learn is not just to take my word for it, but to maybe do some user studies with people that use assistive technology on a daily basis. I say users that use it on a daily basis because you can never classify who does what, and that's another assumption later. And trying to think for a user can create a bad user experience. So yes, that auto expanding menu, that was horrible. Imagine the RSI they caused for their keyboard only users, especially as they didn't have a skip to main content link. Because then you could do the skip to main content, shift tab to get to that end menu item. No, you didn't have that. You had to tab through everything. Right. Now, plain text websites are the only way to be accessible. I was told this by, guess what? A Flash developer. Who uses Flash? Anyone? I outlasted him. Yes. So yeah, sorry, I get excited by these little wins. But he told me accessibility can't be sexy because it has to be plain text. But even if you had a plain text website, it's not plain text. It is more simple. You wouldn't have any calls to action. You wouldn't have anything else. It would just be a random blog of your thoughts, maybe. I don't know. Who would visit? I know people are talking about podcasts about food, but I don't think anyone really would visit a podcast of my thoughts because they're that disjointed. But plain text is going to be paragraphs marked into the HTML. It's not going to be just plain text. And when it comes to using HTML5, a lot of accessibility is built into it, so you don't have to worry as much. And you can use ARIA as well. So this is my way of saying, just because it's not intuitive if you've used a third-party tool that built something full of devices. I'm saying that because that seems to be the norm these days. I mean, does anyone hear from clients that they don't have control over the site because they're using a third-party application to build it for them? Anyone had that? I have. It's fun. Yeah. And then you have to tell them it'll be easier for you to just go back to the drawing board and use actual HTML5. I did a thing on AI the other day, and I was saying about how I had to tell it to use HTML5 rather than the devices it created. So I'm trying to train it. And ARIA is not something you don't use, but something you use to expand on it. Like saying it's expanded. But yes, and if you have lots of plain text, it's hard to read because can you imagine if I didn't have the headings in this slide or the bullet points, the plain text would be hard to follow. The points, like the fact I've got indentations to indicate it follows on from the previous point, or this is new, separate from the other point. So even this plain text with the lovely lines of, it was hard to find any examples of a plain text website. So I just got a screenshot of code. Plain text is hard to read. And I know that, yes, technically you can add styles to make it look better, but not apply the heading trait. Again, no. and images, multimedia, and other controls are not impossible to make accessible. I even said to this Flash person, you do realize Flash can be accessible. And he was like, no, you're ruining my, and I was like, oh God, yeah. I'm just showing off how old I am. But yes, he didn't like the fact that I was asking him to change things because a few tweaks, and it doesn't mean you get rid of, because I know in the early days, there used to be an all singing, all dancing website and then the accessible version. And the accessible version would never get updated. So it will be true for like 5 years ago of products you no longer sell. And this is the reason why we shouldn't say that plain text or an accessible version is good, because isn't it just better to make your main content accessible so there's less points to maintain? I always try to appeal to people's lazy nature. If they're going to be using tools with the devitus, making sure you do it right and that the tool does the right thing will save you a lot of effort later down the line. So yes, the assumption that having a second website, icky. Right, so meeting the web content accessibility guidelines makes your content accessible. Who believes this is true? Anyone? No? Oh, so you didn't need to come to this talk. Right, okay. It's mostly true. The ideas behind it are they've been written by experts with different fields that they're championing for. It's why it takes so long to write anything. I have to admit, sometimes to some meetings I take popcorn because it's fun to watch the egos clash. Obviously, I'm not one of them, no. But they are writing rules that are reproducible, retestable, and easy to fit to. But there are gaps. We all know this. So yes, I keep jumping ahead of my points. So the published result versus the intended result. There is a recent addition. In WCAG 2.1, they did want to have a level A new requirement of the touch target size and have it by 44 by 44 pixels for the touch target size for any call to action. However, it was pushed down to a AAA because the industry experts were like, well, it's a nice idea, but how do we implement it for a paragraph with links in it? How do we implement it for a button that might be a bit small and there's space around it? And all these exceptions that are now thought of. And yes, the intention is great, but trying to make it that it's able to be achieved is difficult. And that's why we have the slipping down. People were a bit upset it went down to a AAA, but WCAG 2.2, we now have a AA, which is 24 by 24, with the exceptions of links in a paragraph of text, with exceptions of making sure the spacing around it, not just the size of the button, is included, which makes automation enjoy trying to pick it up. But yes, the actual intended result was to make it something we test for and be aware of, but the published result is a less extreme version. Because if one person was publishing their own ideas, we would know. This is why the W3C came into context, because there were 38 different sets of guidelines when WCAG 1 came out, and they got all unified into the unified guidelines, and that was 1995. But if you can imagine every company creating their own accessibility guidelines, we all have our own versions of the normative. Like every company I've worked for have interpreted and added their own best practices into this must be done, sequential headings being one of them. I have to admit, where I'm in charge, I try to stay normative and best practice because I do believe you shouldn't try to lie because it undermines your credibility. And the best practices we raise are ones we know will improve user experience. So that will be sequential headings. It will be things like, well, Zoom works, but text resize doesn't. If one works, technically it's a pass. So, but you should still raise the fact the other one doesn't work because user choice. So yeah, I often go by the user impact. because sometimes an A failing, a level A, some companies always go, level A is a high priority, you must fix them. So you've got a decorative image that's being described. Is that going to really hurt anyone? I don't think so. That's a low severity. It's something that technically and also decorative is very subjective. And I often say, unless it repeats the content next to it, then it doesn't hurt anyone to have a description. And you just hear it twice in those situations. So it doesn't hurt anyone. So that's a low impact. But you can have a double A for the color contrast where no one can read it because it's so low. And that's a high severity. So sometimes the success criteria might have the levels in how it impacts the overall, because I believe A is meant to impact most people, double A majority, and then triple A the edge cases. But I don't use those as a criteria of how I rate the severity. I do it according to the user impact. I'm just selling my services here, sorry. And yes, the best result is what I do. And I do shoehorn one edit in for the color contrast. I do not allow for large text exceptions because that was designed for desktop and all web pages can be viewed on a mobile. And mobile screens are smaller, more likely to be moving around. But if I get called on it, I'll be like, yeah, okay, I'm trying to shoehorn that one in. I try to stick to 4.5 to 1 as a minimum rather than 3 to 1, just because technology has changed since it was written. But hopefully, when we get the new algorithm, I don't need to shoehorn things in then. Okay, so are there any questions before we move into the next load of assumptions so after I had a bit of training and I knew a bit more, I had some new assumptions, and there is one I've already given away. Any questions? Any at home? All right, so here we have a street that's a little less narrow to show that my mind has broadened. Aren't I really? Yes. Okay, it seems like a good idea to use images for impact, but anyway, updated list of assumptions. After working in accessibility and not having much interaction with users, my assumptions changed. Blind users cannot see. Screen reader users are blind. That was the one I gave away earlier, isn't it? The change will improve it for all users. I'm raising my eyebrows there for those that can't see it at home. Neurodivergent users do not require accommodations. And obviously I'm lying here because I do need it, but this is a statement I've heard from a developer. I do not require an accessible website, so why do we need to make it? So, yes, these updated assumptions. Blind users cannot see. So here I've got an image of some sunglasses on a Braille book, because whenever you look for stock images of blind people, I think they're extremely patronizing. So blind users cannot see. 15% of users that are blind have no sight. And this is something when I realized this, I felt like an idiot again. I was talking to one of my clients who happened to be blind because I was requested to get some totally blind users for a usability survey. And I asked her, would you mind being one of the participants because we need completely blind users? And she was like, oh, I'm not completely blind. And I was like, oh. And that's when I realized that there's varying levels of sight. In fact, legally blind means vision is a maximum 2200. I have a blind friend who has like pinhole vision, like tunnel vision. And he always freaks people out when he sees someone falling over and he laughs because people are like, how does he see that? No. But if you're in his line of vision, he can see you. But it's not easy because it's not a full sight. So he is requiring to use a stick to get around because he doesn't have the peripheral vision that we rely on. And then there's others that see light, dappled light, shades, and so on. And some, if you're close to them, will see some parts. So yes, I realized I made that assumption, and it is an easy assumption to make if you don't know anyone that's blind, or come to my lecture. Um, and also, another thing I've learned, don't assume the level of blindness someone has. Better to ask, because now that I knew that some people could see, I had a friend of mine who I was leading with the elbow. It was a W3C meetup, and my friend with the blindness, with the pinhole vision, was there, so I knew that he was okay. And this other friend I was leading across the room, I didn't ask him, how much guidance do you need? So when I dropped my elbow, he kept walking and he walked straight into my other friend with his hand full of food from the lunch thing. So I was an idiot then, yes. So I assumed that he could see a bit and he couldn't. And I now know my over-describing ways are probably best. They will soon tell me to shut up if they don't need it. It's easier to, and the same thing, you also, I do find when I first went to CSUN several years ago, and I met lots of blind people that I hadn't met in person before, I was quickly schooled, don't hold hands, offer an elbow. And etiquette like that goes a long way. So I now say, if I see someone struggling, I will offer help or tell someone else to help them, depending on if someone's close, you know, because there's only so much mumming I can do in a day. But I often, like this morning at breakfast, I was helping one guy and I saw another guy trying to leave the cafeteria. So I told Dan to go and help him to get to where he needs to go, because sometimes people don't know they can ask because they don't know you're there. So you can say, would you like a hand? Would you like some guidance? And they can easily tell you to F off. That's something I've learned. Yeah. Yeah, so screen reader users are blind. This is something else that is not true, because some will have some vision. I was told by one blind person, decorative images are very subjective, because if you've got partial sight and you can see something is there and it's not described because someone felt it was just there for decoration, the person who doesn't hear any context feels like they're missing out, they're missing the joke. So if there's something that's put in the page because it should be there, just to set the mood, like here I've got the glasses on the Braille page, that's the mood setting. I always try to describe my images because I never know if people can see it or understand the context of why I've used it. I'm always explaining myself, it's just a thing. But if you can see something's there but you can't hear what it is, it will be excluding you totally. And it can cause some confusion, because like with this client of mine that's hiding things deliberately from screen reader users because it's easier than fixing it. Like they're hiding some of the headings and they're hiding. I'm like, why? It's visually there. And someone who can partially see will be like, why can't I read this content? Also, dyslexic people can use a screen reader, because if you're finding it hard to read words on a screen, having the narration can make it easier for people that can't find reading, or find reading difficult. Also, some might be multitasking. I've had friends ask me, how do I stop the screen reader from announcing notifications from my friends? Because I'm trying to use it to do my learning as I'm doing chores around the house or whatever. And I'm like, oh, that's a cool way to do it. And you just have to make yourself be hidden from all civilization. You know, put yourself on mute. The screen reader announces what's there. You can't tell it to just ignore things, or you shouldn't. That's going back to the developers trying to think for the client. Which goes on to, this change will improve it for all users. And this is a lovely image. There's a happy man in an apron. So obviously he needed some ingredients. And this is obviously during COVID. I say obviously because there's no one at the door giving the package. It's left at the door. Someone's knocked and run away. And now he can bake his bread. He's happy. Or I don't know, maybe that's just beer in a jar. Who knows? Anyway, but if I did that for everybody without asking permission first, I probably would get things thrown. No, I don't know why I use that image, but I do like it because it is showing something that's helpful to some might not be to others. I do know, oh, someone left a package on our doorstep around Christmas time, and we went away to England to see the family, and we came back to some very soggy chocolate. So yeah, that wasn't helpful to us, leaving a package on our doorstep. But yes, moving focus. This is one that I have done in my time when I've assumed if I start editing a text field on a mobile and the keyboard is shown, I assumed the focus should jump to the keyboard until a blind friend told me, Helen, we know it appears at the bottom of the screen, so we just have to tap there to focus it. And then there's that whole thing of if you move the focus to the keyboard, other navigation techniques, it wouldn't be Bluetooth keyboard because the inbuilt keyboards are then not shown by default. But there are other navigation techniques. If you've accidentally selected to edit a field, but you change your mind, you don't want to edit it, you have to go all the way back up the screen or dismiss the keyboard to be able to get the focus back there. So you're not helping that user that accidentally was a bit tap happy because they had too much coffee. Just no. Anyway, there's also show more links. A lot of people say it's best practice when someone activates a show more link to go to the top of the content with the focus. What about the keyboard sighted user that can see there's nothing they want there? They want to show more again or load more. You're then moving their focus. They have to go all the way back down because it's normally like a list of links, isn't it? Or a list of items that you have to tab through. They have to move their focus back down to that load more button again, which means what's the best solution? And I've said, when you've activated load more, let the screen reader know more content has been loaded above this button so that they can go backwards to navigate to see if there's anything they want to go through. And the people that can see without needing to navigate through it can continue forward. You're giving the user a choice. You're not making them cross the road without actually wanting to do it. So yeah, what if you want to repeat that? Like adding rows, you know, those lovely tables where you can add a row and you want to add 5 rows before you start entering the data in. If you add a row and your focus goes back, you're then disjointed from your process of what you wanted to do. So it's all about understanding everybody has this thing called a mind that they will decide what they want to do. And if you force them to do what you think they want to do, they get frustrated and more sweary than a Helen. Yes. And assuming a frustration with how items work. Now, this is a bit controversial. APG, they have examples of tab panels. And some of my testers were raising issues saying that the plain text needs a tab index to move the focus out of the tabs. And that's because that's what APG have done. And I was like, what? And so I raised this question with people from APG saying, why? And they said, because screen reader users don't know how to escape from the form controls. And I was like, they press escape or they exit form control mode and it's fine. And then they use a down arrow. Well, not all of them will know. This tab will let them get out of it. And I'm like, but what about the keyboard user having an extra tab stop where they don't know what it's for? It's like with the over helpful developers adding tab indexes to plain text because they thought that's how a screen reader user would work. Yes, that's assuming a frustration. But if you know how to use the tool that you use on a daily basis, I think you probably know how to escape tab panels. Am I overthinking people's intelligence? I don't know. But if you go against what is the set rules and so on, you're more likely to cause confusion. And I'm all about reducing the confusion. Let the user decide. Let them know content's loaded below, and you can even add in instructions saying press escape to navigate for the screen reader. Isn't it easier just to tell them how to escape rather than assuming they don't know and over engineering it? I know, I'm a simple soul. They did just shout at me and tell me, no, I'm wrong, that they should leave it, and I'm being mean to screen reader users. And yeah, sometimes there's some fights you just can't win. what helps one assistive technology user might frustrate another. So yes, I keep going between the keyboard only sighted user and the screen reader user as the main examples, but there are others out there. It's thinking about like neurodiverse users as well, which we'll get onto in a moment anyway. But what helps one group of neurodivergent users frustrates the other. It's all fun and games. And user research can help. I do think if you're going to make changes that go against what's built in, do some research with people that actually use the tools on a daily basis, because they will tell you if you're annoying them. Not unless you pay them a lot of money, then they might be really nice. I don't know. It's just me. Okay. Yeah, give me $100 and I'll be happy. Anyway, so as I say, neurodivergent users do not require accommodation. So here we have a picture of my two children, another Christmas photo. Yes, that's the only time I get them together smiling. I was a bit annoyed because you can see a curtain just trying to invade at the top there. It was like the most perfect picture. And the curtain ruined it. It was terrible, but I still used it. What is it they say? Photoshop it, yes. So the WCAG success criteria do have some checks to help with neurodivergence. Like I was saying, most of them are AAA, but things like readability, does it make sense? Acronyms. This is why I did spell out the WCAG on a previous slide. So I do always explain my acronyms. I try to practice what I preach, and I always tell my team to not use it. Like when people say, oh, the AT can't do this, and I'm like, what, authoring tool? You know, acronyms can mean multiple things, and if we don't explain them, it is, and that's a AAA. There's some of them I think should be made into AA because that helps everybody, doesn't it? Like if you're new to a business and they have lots of acronyms for things, you don't understand what half of them mean. It's just nice that you don't have to go to a glossary to look things up and back again. Just, yeah. Change on request. That is one, you know, like when you do a search and it automatically searches after you've typed 3 characters. That is very frustrating to some people because a screen reader user will start hearing things of, well, they've done it right, that there's results showing or no results found. Help, that's a new one. The accessible help, making sure that every page has a consistent way of getting help. And I did raise the thing that a search option can be a way to get help, but it's not one of the understanding examples. So I've been told, no, that's not a way. And I was like, understanding documents are just helping to clarify. They're not the be all and end. It's like for the sensory 1.3.3, that one has examples of the green button, press the green button to proceed as an example. But it also means if you have to see it for it to be understood, then it can fail 133 because it's relying on one sense. Also, no, it's not in the understanding. I was like, oh. Every time people try to think understanding is normative, it's not. It's just helping to clarify how to understand things. And you don't have to duck it, okay. The neurodivergent W3C working group, as you can tell, I don't like saying cognitively impaired because I'm neurodivergent. Does it mean my brain doesn't work well? It just means it thinks differently. And I have said to a few people giving speeches, the term a little bit outdated now, but unfortunately the W3C still uses it for the cognitive impairment, and I forget what it stands for now, but yes, there is a W3C working group. But as I said before, what works well for one neurodivergent group really goes against for the other. So some neurodivergent users like a clean, non-cluttered screen because too much information is distracting and overwhelming. Others need instructions on what to do and how to do it and all the exceptions. Tooltip. That way you're not over cluttering the screen, but you still have the information available that they can click on and see. It doesn't always have to be a tooltip, but it could be like a help. Oh, sorry, I just hit the microphone. Did everyone hear a thunk at home? Sorry, it wasn't me dying. So yes, a tooltip is a great way to cater for both. You have the information available, but you're not cluttering the screen up. But understanding the different needs of neurodivergent users is difficult. because as with all humans, we're exactly that. We're human, aren't we? We have these personality things. I've just realized I might finish this a bit early and everyone can go get coffee. Who knows? But basically, I distracted myself then, didn't I? Basically, when it comes to accommodations for neurodivergency, it's often more thought of these days because people have become more vocal about what they need, although I think it might be going backwards again right now. I don't know. It's keeping things simple, direct, to the point, understanding that I will say inappropriate things because I sometimes forget I might not know you on a personal level, like when I ask you for your preferences with a screen reader, you know. It is one of those things. We are more aware of neurodivergent users and how different we all are. And I know some people cringe when it's said, but I don't think neurotypical really is a thing. I think everyone has slight traits. It's nothing wrong with it. It's just the brain can't be one size fits all. We all have variations. We all have those tired moments where we have a bit of neurodivergency then because our brain isn't functioning as well as it should do, or jet lag in some cases. Hello. So yes, it is one of those things that we do need to make accommodations. We don't always have to do really obvious ones, but for me, I keep the text short on the screen. There are some big sentences, evil, but I try to keep it short. I try to keep it spaced out. I try to keep it easy to read, partly because then people pay attention to what I'm saying rather than reading all the text on the screen. I know I wouldn't be good at legal stuff because there's a lot of text in those ones. And this is my final one. So here's a sleeping dog. It just looked cute. I do not require an accessible website. So it's not true. I do need it. How many people woke up without a coffee, answered a work email, and then realized that they've just signed up to doing 5 hours of work they didn't want to do? Anyone? Me? Yeah. I have some of my team that are very verbose, and it's hard to believe they're more verbose than me. I try to keep emails short and to the point so that all those niceties, I end up missing what is actually being asked of me sometimes. And sometimes I'll read an email and I think, oh, they want this. And then I read it again later and I'm like, oh, they actually asked for 12 other things in different places. And that's where I get caught out because people are too verbose at times. Because we're all told to use the AI tool to make us sound nicer, don't we? I like short, sweet, you're rubbish, go away. I don't say it to everyone, don't worry. It's one of those things, to the point and straight. But not enough sleep can cause blurred vision. Yeah, or having a screen that you stare at all day can cause blurred vision. So having stronger text, easier to read text, simple text, it all makes, I mean, I was talking about emails, but it's, again, with websites, some websites tell you their whole story in lots and lots of text, like trying to find the information you want. Like I've had the search this week to find candy corn because my son has asked for it. And I was very lucky because Dave found me a big jar of, and I think he got it from a special. I feel like I should offer him. Oh, I don't know, my firstborn child, but then that's the child I'm getting. No, he wants a video of him trying it for the first time. But I've been looking at all these websites of sweet shops in the area, trying to work out if they sell candy corn. Yeah, anyway, I now know the history of all the shops. I don't know what they sell. And also they have lots of images with text over the, oh, yeah, anyway. So I do think people should test on their mobiles quite a lot because when you're abroad, you're looking on your mobile rather than on a desktop or a laptop, and it is harder to read. And if you have an accessible website, it would have readable text that isn't over an image that because you can tell when they haven't thought about the mobile design or the screen because that's when it is atrocious. We've all seen it, no? Or been blinded by some of them. Yes, I know I am dramatic. I apologize. And distraction. If I'm distracted, like I might be thinking about oh no, I've got to get back and I've got to smuggle this big jar of candy corn. How am I going to do it? I'm going to be distracted and not paying attention to what I'm saying, aren't I? I go off my tangents all the time. But distraction and concentration means, again, a nice, simple, accessible website. That's the thing. Yes, the Flash developer saying it's not sexy. I did worry about him, actually. It's like, you find Flash sexy? But it's the whole, an accessible website is clean, clear, to the point, and tells you, it's easy to find the help, so you can find what you need. Search facility, that's really good. I mean, I always use Control F when I've got a long-winded page to see if it mentions anything that I'm looking for. And if I can't concentrate, I just can't have the energy to look through all this content and so on. And yeah, accessibility helps when I'm not 100%, or just me, really. I'm never 100%. I've heard about this thing called sleep, but with children, it's I hear when they're 20, they don't move out anymore. So I've still got, yeah. So to summarize, I always summary notes because you can't have the same title on two screens. Accessibility is for everybody, although they don't realize it. The more that we cater and help people understand it's not just for the extremes and the exceptions to the rule, it's for everyone, for those moments. I find sometimes by making that clear to the people in charge, that gives them motivation to increase the buy-in to accessibility, because if they know it's going to make life easier for them and they can get a win by you doing the work, it gets bought into. Assumptions happen due to a lack of exposure to users. So I found the more I spoke to people that use assistive technology, the more I realized I had to learn, or the more, and also knowing one blind person is nice. You know, one blind person. It doesn't mean that's the same experience for all other blind people. There are sometimes some people that think that's enough. That's great. That's obviously all they wanted. And assumptions are not always wrong. There's always some basis of truth to it. And you can see where most of those assumptions came from. Wishful thinking for the developers' part, that it's all screen readers we have to cater for. Yeah. And the WCAG point, yes, being compliant with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines does give you a starting point to being accessible, but the user experience helps finish it off. And research. I do believe user research is a great way to improve your understanding and your website. A lot of people think they've done the audit, that's all they need. That's not the case. You can get away with just doing the audit if you've got someone who knows about the users and is able to advise you on what users tend to want, but that's still just one person's ill-formed ideas. I mean, half the ideas I've got from talking to people, but I also know I can be wrong. One person isn't enough to know the opinion of what works for others. And the user does include you. Don't just say, oh, users find this difficult. Say, I found it difficult with my little brain without coffee and sleep deprivation. I couldn't read this. They often then say, just get some sleep, woman, go away. But yeah, keep the user in mind. I think when it comes to accessibility, we think all about the legal stuff, the guidelines, the AI, whatever. The user is what we do this for, making sure that we're not causing someone to be disabled by what we create or what we help create. And AI is not evil, it's just a young child who hasn't been informed yet. Right, questions? Like I say, after this, I'm out of here, so you better make some good questions. And for those at home, there's someone across the other side of the room, so I just do small talk. Right.
Recommendations and researches and recommendations of users, but when you do have kind of varying preferences on things, such as do you describe decorative images or not, or you know, years ago, I had a student who had some vision, also used a screen reader. You know, like inactive elements don't necessarily have to, have accessible or meet minimum color contrast, ratios. So like gray text, light gray text on a white background, if he wasn't sure, is that just really terrible contrast or is it inactive? Like those kinds of situations are just so challenging when there are differing needs, differing perspectives, preferences. Just any additional advice for us that you could share?
Yeah, that was okay. So we've got half an hour, right? Basically, when it comes to decorative images, I say the only way you can truly say something is decorative is if the description of the image is repeated in adjacent text, because then you're hearing it twice. All other cases, if someone deems something to be decorative and does alt-empty quotes and it isn't anything you need to see to understand, that's okay, that's their choice. It's very subjective, but I would describe what people deem as decorative because it sets a mood, it sets a tone. It's just, I mean, well, in my case, it's filling gaps so that I don't have to write as much. But yes, images, I think, are very subjective because some are very like, well, I don't need to see it, so I don't think it should be described. It's like, well, that's okay for you, but you can't speak for others. And I think if you're ever unsure, an alternative text is better than none at all. As for the color contrast, sometimes disabled items should be included. I had a form of all my details in that was read only. So it was very light grey text on a lighter grey background, and I couldn't read it. I had to highlight everything or zoom in to read the text to understand, do I need to edit this form to change my details? Are my details correct? So sometimes it depends on how items are being used. If it's text that's helping you to understand what is going on, for instance, placeholder text, I think should be darker because it's giving extra information. When I was looking at windsurf, I found that there was lots of informational text that was low contrast, that was helping you to understand how to use the tool. That needs to be darker. Anything that you need to see to understand. The disabled items, I understand they're exempt and don't need to meet the contrast, but it's also nice to have instructions. That's when you have the instructions of why that button's disabled, because a lot of people assume that people can work it out. If you think, if there's something where you have to assume a relationship, that means then you're missing some instructions. So that's when you should have something saying all fields are required to be able to submit, or all fields are required to be filled out. And it's just a simple line that can make a massive difference to the understanding of why that's disabled. I know that wasn't quite the question, but disabled buttons, I think, are fine low contrast, so long as there is a justification to the user of how to get it enabled. And that often is missed, even if it is just required in the label for all the required fields, with the ARIA required true, and you know, there's multiple ways to do it. Everyone does it slightly differently. But I do think instructions on how to fill out forms are often missed out because people assume that they're as tech savvy as you. And I often think, would my mum be able to do this? My mum is my guidance of, does it need more explanation? Does it need to be zoomed in on? Like when I'm shopping with her, she'll often pass me something in the shops to read the ingredients for her because she can't. I have told her magnifying glasses are portable, but no, apparently I'm her testing tool. But yes, they're all, my golden rule is to think that if I have to think to fill in gaps, and that is something we don't always intuitively know that we're doing. It comes over to, it's hard to explain really, because I know when I'm having to think or fill in gaps a bit more because I've been trying to train others on how to do accessibility. And I think the more I train others on how to do accessibility testing, the more I realize how much I've taken for granted. And then it helps me to keep fresh and to learn more. But yes, the more you have to fill in the gaps that you think are intuitive, the more you need to add to your site to make it truly accessible. I hope I've answered your question. Yay. Any other questions? Or anyone want to share? Yes, Christina, low vision users using assistive technology can customize color and contrast. They can do if the browser lets them. That's when user agent accessibility guidelines come in, because I was testing a browser brand new coming onto the market and it didn't allow bookmarks to be added. So you couldn't do the text spacing test at all. And I had to let them. Yeah, bookmarklets. They didn't, sorry. Yeah, they allowed bookmarks as favorites, but you couldn't add a bookmarklet, which meant you couldn't execute your own CSS and insert it in. You could only run them if you're on the page for the bookmarklet. Yeah, I'm tired. I'm getting my I need a translator. Yes, but and this browser, I had to let them know that you have to allow people the option to be able to customize. And if you don't allow that, then yes, low vision users can adapt and change how a site looks if the program that they're rendering the content in lets them. And I always assume you can't tell which browser people are going to use or want to use. So I just make it accessible. I'm very simple, really. I always assume the other parties that could affect it will be wrong. So I try to make it right with what I can control. Any other questions? I'm looking behind me. I'm looking in front of me. I'm looking to everyone thinking, I can get a coffee. Stop talking, Helen. The flashing lights. Yes, yeah. It used to also have, my laptop has a flashing background on it, which I have tried to disable because I've been told by the people it's distracting. I don't see it. I disabled the one on the keyboard because it was flashing on my keyboard. I was like, whoa, is it alive? Is it breathing? But yes, it is. I use it to contain the audience to make sure that they don't ask too many questions at the end.
Except that you didn't get questions about flashing lights.
I did just now. I got the flashing light.
I'm saying you say it stops us from asking questions, but then I ask the question.
Yes. Well, I did
So-
test it. It's not going to cause any epileptic fits, just distract the ADHDers. Yeah. This is why it's okay for me because I don't see that side of it. It's normally against the wall, and sometimes I see it flashing, and I'm like, oh yes. I was at a meetup because the ACT group that I'm part of, we had a meetup in Edinburgh, and I got told by the developers that I was causing them to not do any work. It wasn't me chatting for a change; it was the lights. So yes, I am not accessible, I'm afraid. So I think from everyone packing up, that's their sign they want to go. Thank you, people at home. If you've got any questions, ask them now or forever hold your peace. Oh, the digital speedometer on the car. Yes. I have to admit, I made sure that I didn't let my husband change the settings. I picked the car up and I did all the settings, and the car showman said, do you want to make it editable so your husband can change? I was like, no. He's always adjusting the seatbelt holder so that I end up getting strangled when I'm driving. So yeah, no, that's all the control he's allowed. And he's not going to watch this, so it's okay. Any other questions? No? Any observations? No? Okay, right. So on that note, thank you for being fantastic. I think this is the first time I once has finished before time. So yay, you've been fantastic.